Welcome, everybody. Welcome to OpenCV Weekly Webinar. And today we have John Keefe with us, who is the founder of Draw and Code. So he's going to tell us how we can create these beautiful experiences with computer vision and all about his company. John, would you like to briefly introduce yourself? And then we will have a more detailed introduction later on.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name's John Keefe. I'm the director, founder, co-founder of a studio called Draw and Code. We've been going for just coming up to 10 years. And yeah, we're very, very much into immersive experiences and putting people inside the story. So excited to talk to you today and to tell you more.
That's great. And also with us is Phil Nelson, as always, who is the content manager at opencv.org. And he is responsible for putting together these shows. Hi, Phil.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to be back for another episode. I think this is technically episode 30 of OpenCV Weekly Webinar, which Hokey Smokes Bullwinkle. Really glad to have John here. We had to reschedule, but that worked out great anyway, because the tutorial episode was one of our more popular ones recently. So really looking forward to this one. As always, we will have time for Q&A at the end, so please use the Zoom Q&A functionality to ask your question at any time during the show here, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. We'll also be doing a giveaway of OpenCV Courses 1 and a set of SwapBots from Draw and Code, their mixed reality toy, which is kind of how John and I met. So I'm really looking forward to that too.
All right, so let's get started with the presentation you have, John.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see if this is going to work.
We have had some technical issues today.
Fingers crossed.
Off we go.
So far, so good.
So yeah, so Draw and Code, we like to create immersive experiences. We like to tell stories. It was founded by myself and Andy Cooper. Coming up to 10 years, so it's 10 years, I think April officially next year. Although we have, Andy and myself have been working together in some capacity for probably 15 years, doing all sorts of ridiculous things that, you know, start off as impossible. And then we try and figure out ways to make it possible. And in recent times, we've brought on a CEO, we've become kind of a bit more grown up and doing things, I guess, properly or more expensively. I'm not sure which is the correct terminology there. So yeah, he joined us from Warner Brothers to kind of really shape the future of the business as we kind of get more and more involved, bring more products to market and expand our kind of studio business. So yeah,
probably has a lot of great connections to bring to the company too.
Definitely. I think I actually met him at like a games industry event dinner, and I think kind of I sat down next to him, I saw his kind of name tag, and like within 30 seconds I'd pitched him, and he was kind of like, yeah, these are guys that I want to work with. So we talked to him for a few years. So yeah, it's yeah, good story. You know, fortunately we're all kind of white men up there, so we are working on our diversity. We've got some amazing people, but and actually the picture of me, I'm looking more like Spencer. But
that was my exact thought. I was going to say that, you know, John, you put your picture from a few years back.
Yeah, it definitely needs updating. It was great having hair. I remember it well. So yeah, I'm going to start with a bit of a show reel to give you a flavor of the work we do. So here we go.
Yeah, not really getting audio from the video there, but I'll link the video in chat here.
You can speak over it, John, if you want, so that we know what's going on.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn my volume down because I'm picking up the audio here. So yeah, you're seeing a range of events and experiences we've created over the last kind of 10 years. I will kind of talk a bit more detail around kind of some of what we've seen. But you've seen everything from a lot of the work we do in museums, kind of more marketing-led activations, like the kind of piece we did with Sony there. you're now looking at our SwapBots toy, and I say we will kind of dig in a bit more detail on various projects. So this hopefully just gives you a feel for the kind of stuff we do.
These things are also getting very mainstream now. Like, I don't know whether it's what kind of phone you need, but if you go to Amazon, let's say you search for a chair, and you can actually have an immersive experience there that this chair actually can, they can show this chair in your living room. So it's basically mixed reality. You have this virtual chair that goes in the living room. I saw that.
And it'll be to scale and everything.
Yeah, it's up to scale. It looks perfectly. You can walk around it. And the first time I saw it, just a few years back, it was mind-boggling. But now this has become standard. And go search on Amazon for chair, and hopefully it will work on your phone. I don't know what requirements are. It does work on my iPhone 12. So I don't know whether
it works on relatively older phones. Actually, it depends on which GPU I think you have in there that actually cares about, because it's got to do the processing somewhere.
Right. It's not just about processing; it's also about the 3D information you need to render that thing. Right. If you have a LiDAR, then it's kind of straightforward. You can easily estimate the ground plane, etc. Otherwise, you'll have to do it visually.
Right. You can get ground plane and also scale pretty quickly.
Yeah, and maybe John will tell us more about the technology inside it.
Yeah, and we work with a variety of technologies. Sometimes we're using depth cameras. Sometimes we're just using kind of monocular lamp, simultaneous localization and mapping, and obviously which AR kit and AR core. So these are very commonplace. And then kind of more recently, we're doing a lot more around the web AR, like kind of deployments. Technologies. Eighth Wall have an amazing kind of engine for web-based deployments. And again, that's the project you saw in that video was actually for John Lewis, and yeah, that was maybe 4 years back. And that was relatively advanced for kind of most mobile phones. But now you've got, I think there's the numbers is Eighth Wall can support over 3 billion devices essentially on the planet to deliver experiences of that particular type, which is phenomenal in such a short time that we're and obviously there are blockers to kind of doing this through the web, frame rate through browsers, things like that. And just access to kind of some of the more advanced APIs of the devices, and again, obviously any issues you may have between Apple and Google in the way that they tackle these problems. But yeah, what you're seeing here is a selection on screen now is a selection of our clients. We work with Liverpool and numerous football clubs, actually, Chelsea being another one. Designing kind of location-based experiences, some marketing activations. Again, we've done lots for lots of different clients. But generally speaking, our revenues have come from kind of marketing use cases of these technologies, just because that's where the kind of early adoption was and the revenues were for us. And now we're kind of looking much more at kind of the experiential space, kind of storytelling with it, and location-based entertainment. Although we do still touch on consumer products, as you'll see with SwapBots and the like.
Right.
Here's some technologies that we're working with, and a lot of these are out of date now, actually. So this needs a serious update. This deck. I guess that shows maybe how busy we are, that we're not quite keeping our decks as up to date as we should. But yeah, obviously seeing likes of Structure and Sipsol, that's obviously how I met Phil many years ago. But it's actually, I think it was 2013 or 14, perhaps at AWE, and we were kind of neighbors essentially.
Yes, I recall.
So it was.
Then I recall many gin and tonics, and then I don't remember so much after that.
I think that feels like most of our encounters, actually, Phil. But let's not go too far in that direction today. And it is getting here in the UK. It's after 5, so I feel like that's an acceptable gin and tonic time as well. So we're working with lots of different kit. Partly dealing with the visual piece, so kind of recreating and rendering out the experiences, whether that's in kind of an AR, VR, or a mixed reality environment. and then also dealing with kind of persistence and localization within spaces so that we can create these experiences. And ultimately, it kind of, that's the pieces of the puzzle for us are kind of, the location, kind of grounding the digital content within the spaces, in understanding people and their interactions with the space, the digital components, and also each other. And so kind of computer vision becomes a huge part of solving a lot of those problems. So we're often using lots of different technologies to create these experiences that that seem quite simple sometimes, but actually there's a lot of complexity in how we would deliver those. And that kind of brings us to kind of the beginning, I guess, and a project that we did 10 years ago. And I said ambitious beginnings here because this was essentially, this was our first project in AR out of the gate. And what we decided to do was projection map a very large space and then have aerial performers performing on that projection mapped wall, interacting with the digital content. And then just to throw in an extra curveball, we thought, well, let's try and add in an AR layer. Let's try and create a digital layer on top of that. So that's, in
2012.
2012, with no money and a ridiculous dream, we did this. And you're not going to see the AR piece because it was incredibly janky, as you'd imagine, but you see the performance piece. Let me just silence that. So what you're kind of seeing is, I say she is actually on a wall, looking around her. The animation is all designed. It was all hand drawn as well, just to throw in another, complex piece of the puzzle. And so she essentially is performing in this space. We've mapped out this kind of 3D environment, and so there's nothing to an engine. So she's supposed to be running away from these weird, crazy creatures. And what we had in the kind of AR layer was some of those creatures kind of leaving the screen and around. So it kind of, it felt very spatial.
Right.
And even this, the performance of her kind of doing the slow motion piece, we actually worked with these performers quite frequently, doing a number of pretty insane, really large scale events for massive audiences, but mostly focusing on projection mapping. But the thing for us was we wanted interactivity in it. We wanted people to participate. And so this was kind of, this is amazing. Like these are great experiences, great performances to watch, and they are immersive in their own right. But the second that they become non-linear, it's more exciting for us.
Right.
That rotation and jump at the end was very cool.
Just to pause a little bit, I just want to make sure that everybody understands, and I also understand what's going on here. So you have, let's say, a wall, right? This is my understanding. You have a wall on which you are projecting this virtual scene. All the hand-drawn stuff is all virtual scene. And on this wall is also hanging this person who is the performer, right? She's on your team. She knows what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
And this whole thing people are able to watch. Now, you also mentioned something about audience interaction. Where does that fit in?
So that was so what we were. This is very early, and it's because it is a more traditional rendered out animation. But what we were kind of doing was that you see the kind of goblin weird creatures kind of that she's swatting away.
Yeah.
We basically created additional ones of those that almost the audience had to help her kind of navigate this crazy monster. You're going to see weird monster mazes as a theme in this presentation. But yeah, this was our first weird monster maze. But yeah, exactly as you say. And incredibly, the performers that we work with to do this, they're unbelievable. Like they're so talented. They worked in things. I think they worked with the Sydney Olympics and kind of worked with the opening of that. And
wow.
we were involved in a few different events with them. And that was kind of, this is more, so Andy's background was very much in that kind of animation. He studied a lot of stop motion and animation, things like this. And when you think about draw and code, easy way to look at it is Andy and John, and Andy is draw and I am code. And that's how it began, as two of us with ridiculous ideas that no one managed to stop us trying to do our ideas. Oh, in fact, loads of people tried to stop us. But we managed to find the kind of path through. And actually I think we got a $5,000 grant to do this thing. And when you think about what was in you just saw, $5,000 didn't cover the rental of the hardware.
Yeah, I can
talk about doing a lot with a little. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of from an experiential point of view. This was the first piece we did. We were doing other projects back then, but more simple digital activations for people that probably didn't quite qualify as immersive and weren't. And what we were doing is behind the scenes doing a lot of prototype and R&D to understand the art of the possible from the technology coming down the road.
So for this one, is there any computer vision per se, or so?
No. So actually, there wasn't, but the intention was that if we could make this a performance, and I say computer vision is the solution to a lot of our problems and the issues we hit at the time. So this is kind of sort of saying where it began, and if we were to do this today, that there's so much more technology that we could use to help us deliver this, and computer vision would be at the heart of that. And we'll, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some of the new things that we've got coming, which we'll touch on some of the things that we can do today, if you like.
That's great.
I'd like to say that the this performance also reminded me a whole lot of the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings, like the rotoscopes, because it's a real person, and they did a lot of rotoscoping in that. It is very much, the art style is also kind of similar. I dig it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, man. So we're going to fast forward a couple of years, probably to one of the first times I met Phil, where we took some of our crazier ideas and more mobile-led experiences, and again, mostly using SLAM and image recognition, but this was our kind of early steps into this space, and so it's kind of a selection of relatively, mostly arts-driven experiences, slight storytelling pieces, extensions of, again, the art was an easy one because we were already working with a lot of artists, doing a lot around museums, and we saw AR as a really easy, as a means to kind of extend, what a piece of art could be, and dig into, the creation of it, and or even just extra storytelling pieces, secrets and things like this. So that we basically, AWE was really our big, that was us saying we're here and we're going to try and do this. It was a coming out party in a way. It was, and what was interesting is we rocked up AWE, and back then it was, there was a lot of janky headsets and technologies, and there wasn't much from a the content was lacking, let's put it, and I think that what we sort of stood out because we had bright, colorful, crazy, weird content that was showing real kind of commercial use cases of technologies where people were really, where actually AW was mostly about kind of the future, looking forwards, and nothing was particularly market ready as such. And
there wasn't a lot of polish at the show.
No. That's fair to say, and I'm not saying that, and I don't think we necessarily brought the polish, but we definitely brought the creativity, and I kind of one of my kind of one of the people that we met at that show, a guy called Dave Lorenzini, who's an amazing guy. He was involved with Keyhole in the early days, which kind of became Google Earth, and I remember meeting him in the bar again. So the stories are going to start with I met somebody in a bar, but and at that show I was kind of talking about saying the only thing I'm disappointed not to have seen was the Google Tango, and that was the time that essentially it was just doing the rounds, and there was supposed to be 300 or 400 devices with LiDAR cameras and I was like desperate to see one working and have a play with it. So I say to Dave, I'm shame, Google went here with the Tango, and he just reaches into his pocket, pulls one out, and starts kind of moving around the room, kind of planting grass seeds and creating weird little experiences. And I'm kind of like, that was it. I was right. And that was for me the reality was that these technologies were around. It was, you just had to start talking to people in the room. And that was really us beginning to sort of, embed ourselves into those rooms, I suppose. Because we were keen to get our hands on the technologies, because we knew that they would help solve the problems to enable us to tell those stories and to put people into the experiences, as opposed to being sort of at the side of the experiences. And that was really kind of critical to where we wanted to take this. And we've always had the vision, but I say we've just been watching the technologies evolve in front of us. And I think part of that comes from, personally, I've been working in technology since '97, and I missed a number of of the kind of first that I was designing things and creating things that were first of their time, but I didn't have anyone around me to sort of go, actually, no one's done this yet. So you just watch these things happen and go, oh, I did that a year ago when it comes to market, and then they sell it for $1 billion or whatever. But
there was a lot of that at Occipital too.
Yeah. So I think it was kind of, there was a point when we said we have to stop saying we could have, we should have, and we just need to do it. We've it's been a challenge, like surviving 10 years of going into a really complex, fast-moving space like this without really clear revenue opportunities. It's taken some doing, but we are still here and we are growing and still smiling. Mostly, but no, it's been an amazing time, and this was, like Phil said, this was our coming out party. It was like, look what we can do. Is it any good? And enough people said, actually, it's pretty cool. Like, and that's when we started to build up a kind of client roster who were looking to do R&D around, what can their brand be in this space, essentially. Let's move.
Yeah, definitely one of the first companies that adopted structure sensor for more creative uses. I think that's pretty much the reason we know each other, is that you're just making cool stuff with structure sensor. It was one of those like, holy shit.
and as is the case in these industries, there's a load of stuff that I'd love to talk about today that I can't because of our friends' NDAs. But I think we'll hopefully be able to talk around enough things that'll kind of give a flavor of what's coming. But yeah, I think kind of some of the most amazing things we've done, we can't ever talk about, and that's unless again you meet me in a bar with a couple of gins and then maybe. So this was our kind of evolution of what so this is kind of 1 year on. We tested the waters, and with this was our outing to create something we call Companion, and it was essentially the means of creating almost asynchronous experiences through different mediums. So this experience is being, you've got two people participating in it. You've got a character that's navigating through a monster that's navigating through the maze. I told you about the monsters and mazes. And then you have a person that's kind of supporting you in that gameplay using kind of AR. And the person who's in VR, who's navigating the maze, can't do anything. They're kind of, they can move around and find the path, but they can't kill the monsters, as it were. But the person on the iPad who's basically a UFO flying around the world using kind of AR, they can kind of zap them. So it was this kind of part real world conversational experience where you were kind of giving the feedback saying, yeah, head, turn left, turn right, shoot that ghost. And so it was really fun. And then we had the kind of the audience participation bit where they could almost kind of watch on the projection map space where we were then relaying the experience. So you're almost creating a spectator's version and then all the participatory pieces. And in this demo, we were just using again, SLAM, but we did actually go a lot further with this, and we integrated depth sensors. We had a series of devices. We were tracking hands off one device and pairing that with other devices. So essentially, we were using a relatively low cost device set and then aggregating all that data to create a sort of single experience.
So and it was, let me just pause a little bit and try to understand the whole the scope of this. So there is a person wearing a VR headset and they are looking at this. Is it a completely VR scene, or what they are projecting onto their screen is basically part reality and part virtual?
Yeah, so what the person is in the VR headset, they're seeing a completely virtual world.
Yeah.
The person with the AR device, the mobile device, is seeing an augmented version or a semi-mixed reality version of the maze that's grounded in the real world. And then the projection mapping kind of shows a mixture of viewpoints of the two. To be honest, it kind of blended that. And it was, again, it was really to just partly to draw people in the spectator piece, but also looking at experience, it isn't, there are people do want to participate, but some people just quite like the passive piece. And then there is this sort of, you can actually still play by watching, you could give feedback to the other people from what you were seeing essentially. But this was
the SLAM here. Did you guys have to write it, or it was part of the AR kit? I don't remember whether these things were out there.
So back then. There wasn't. We were actually using. I think we were using an earlier version of someone else's SLAM. It wasn't at that point. AR kit wasn't. I don't think it evolved. We were actually. I think for this particular one at the show, we simplified it and we used a large-scale printed marker. Partly because technology on show floors, it can be a nightmare. So I think in that particular demo, I think we may have cheated and used an image marker essentially just to ensure we were getting stability.
And your own logo serves as the marker sometimes. I took a glimpse of it and it looked like sometimes you're using your logo as the marker.
Well, sticking with the alcohol theme, we basically gave out beer mats that were augmented reality markers in themselves. So they had kind of little playable experiences that you could take away. So instead of giving out business cards, we were giving out beer mats.
That's very funny, because after a few drinks, you don't know whether it's real, virtual, or your imagination.
Yeah, that's it. We can put the virtual drinks out there when people have had too much, just to yeah.
Right.
So kind of moving on a little bit further, getting into some early volumetric work, and this was, by 2016 now, we were working with a band in Liverpool who I think were on the Domino label and called All We Are, and they kind of came to us. They'd had some success with a couple of albums, and they came to us and said they wanted to do something quite a bit different. And did we have any ideas? And we kind of showed them all the technology, and then we visited them, and they lived in an old school, an old primary school, the three of them, and so you walked in, and it looks like a primary school still. You had the blackboards, and it had all the seats and stuff around. And then they had like kind of bedrooms in old, I don't know, staff rooms and things like that. But interestingly, the way they played, the way that they performed, when they practiced, they all stand like a triangle facing each other and play at each other. And it's like this kind of it's quite intimate almost between them when they're playing and performing. When they're rehearsing at least. And so we were like, well, we'd love to try and put people at the heart of that. So we wanted to make it kind of a bit more abstract. So we kind of did this point cloud capture using Connects, and then rebuilt, and let's hit play, and then recreated some of the aspects around it. And so essentially you could go and stand in the middle of them, and it felt like they're kind of, they're coming apart and the particles were kind of flying out. Again, a lot of these experiences work so much better first person, so you'll just have to have a little bit of imagination to how it felt, so that we've kind of recreated some of the outputs. But actually, from a spatial audio point of view, from a visual point of view, having been there and in this environment was pretty special. And we did actually, not in this version, but we captured some of the 3D scanned some of the space as well where they performed, so that we could, because we just thought it was, fans love that, to sort of see and feel the connection with where the music was created, and
right.
And I think that they didn't, so that was kind of a really nice little piece, but just something a bit different, I guess.
Yeah, that's very interesting, but I am probably missing the experience part of it. How does one experience this thing? Like, let's say is it through a headset? Is it in person? You go there and you have this experience?
Yeah, so this was for basically there was a arts conference in the UK, and we worked on the piece, and then there was essentially a Q&A, and then we showcased it. So yeah, you would come in and stand in the center of it and sort of feel this moment in the performance. Right. And it was pretty magical, to be honest, even though it was pretty simplistic. And I'd say a lot of immersive experiences don't really translate when you just show a video on YouTube or something. You kind of have to have that first person experience. But right. It was another sort of, this was taking recreations of things that happen in the physical world and bringing them into virtual spaces, as opposed to sort of some of the work where we'd been kind of doing the reverse previously.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the volumetric video. I used to do demos with that all the time with Structure Sensor. I had built a little bespoke app at one point that would do little RGB kind of point clouds from it. It was fun.
Yeah. No, I think half of I do, wherever I go, I end up scanning and kind of just, I don't know why, we've got scans of all of our studios and like houses and all sorts of stuff. But again, we like to find places that have got interesting stories to tell, and almost so you can then start overlaying or going back or going forward and really playing with that. And again, this is sort of 2017 now. And again, we took this to AWE and showcased it. And we also created some patents. And actually, we created patents for the companion piece as well. And so SwapBots got a lot of traction very early because it was something quite different, and it was super low cost. We basically got the price of the manufacturing of a single toy down to like sub $1. And kids were going crazy for it. I think the challenge with this one was, again, we don't seem to choose easy projects. We thought, let's become a toy company, because that's easy. Everyone just becomes a toy company. So we started down the journey of what would it take to create a toy from scratch and build that prototype, get it in the hands of kids, find a partner to manufacture it, and so we went down the road of a Kickstarter, and obviously that's something you're all very familiar with. And yeah, we've all got the battle scars, no doubt, to go with that. And $1 million is incredible, so well done.
Thank you.
And yeah, so we started building very, very early kind of prototypes of this, and it was probably 2016 when we started. And we kind of 3D printed. We test a lot of the markers. We had to design our own kind of stitch marker system. So we built on top of Euphoria's stack, and they didn't, essentially, we wanted it so that you could have unlimited combinations of the toys you have, and every combination to be different from a visual point of view, from a characterization point of view, and abilities. So this was a journey we went on, and are still on, actually. So we fulfilled the Kickstarter. We did everything. We partnered with Creator, who were essentially the manufacturing partner behind Skylanders. So they had kind of pedigree working in Toys to Life, I guess. But the challenge is the video game space is as we shifted into, it's incredibly digitally focused, whereas kind of toys and games has a slightly different approach. You go into a toy store, you've got a boys aisle, a girls aisle, and that's not really, we're trying to design a gender neutral toy that and you're like, where does this go? So it was interesting understanding the retail landscape and all the technical problems of designing this. But this is still ongoing. We're reworking it because the pandemic caused huge problems from manufacturing, distributing. Retail is hugely affected. So we're kind of looking at a hybrid model for this now, where we still want to use physical. We still think, and there's also the sustainability angle as well here, that the fact that, I don't know if the world needed a load more plastic in landfill. So we're trying to do something that's a bit more aligned with today's kind of needs and markets. But we're super excited about SwapBots still, and it's been
SwapBots. Sorry. So it's a physical toy, right? It's a physical toy, and by the name of it, it looks like you can swap out various pieces of it, like have a different torso, etc. And how does it interact with the app that that it's shown here? What's going on?
So what's happening first? The image bottom right you're seeing there. You take your SwapBots. So if you had the kind of 3-pack of toys, it gives you, I think it's 27 combinations of characters that you can make. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the idea is that, in a similar way to Pokemon, different types of Pokemon are better against different other types of Pokemon. So there's kind of a whole lore and world built out behind it. But yeah, the idea is you'd build your kind of perfect character. You would take it on an adventure, or you take it into a battle. And then it might be that your friend kind of takes you out because he's got some crazy pirate curse or whatever. Right. And then so you swap around your pieces to kind of come back at him. And, you've got that physical digital play pattern. And what we found was parents and, kids still love these tangible objects, but they also are incredibly drawn to video games. I've got 3 children myself, and it's, they went crazy for this. And that was what we saw, was that not only, it's rare that you kind of look at a toy video game property that both kids and parents are excited about, because it sort of solves multiple needs. It's got that tangible play that you can take away. And we started to, the computer vision here is, we're using, it's as low end a mobile device as possible. So we were leveraging Vueforia's tracking and their kind of stitched marker system, and then building out on top of that to enable us, because it's quite small, generally speaking, they don't recommend kind of going this small. So we had to firstly find kind of a design language that tracked well. And we had to then kind of, because the speed of the recognition and the continuous tracking, we had to sort of build on top to stabilize that. And that took the bulk of the work. And I say we do have some patents now in this space, which is neat. And there's definitely
stuff. It looks like there's definitely stuff you have to, design language wise, is really fascinating to me, how the choices that have to be made in terms of the actual design of the printed characters in order to differentiate them from each other, to make sure that they are really optimized for this tracking is a really fascinating problem from a graphic design standpoint to me.
Yeah, and then kind of going, where we've seen this is it's interesting, because we wanted to almost build in a unique code into the design as well, so that your history of that particular toy carries on. And again, if you look at, see, this is a while before anyone was talking about NFTs. Yeah, and pre-Amiibo. So it's kind of, but that was the thinking is that someone puts all that effort into building this character, they should all be they are all unique, and the experiences they have are all unique. So how do we link that back to the toy? So that was, one of the challenges. And actually, we've got some really neat solutions on how we achieve that now. And again, I think,
are people playing with these toys in the real world or in the virtual world? I can see that it gets recognized in the application, right? But after that, do you still play in the real world and it's reflected in the virtual world, or do you actually play in the virtual world after that?
So we went through lots of iterations actually around that, and it's a combination. So the more creative play, it is kind of still focused around the toy. But the things like battle, a lot of the gameplay we had to sort of separate out, and partly because kind of kids are, if you watch the way that they play, and even all the scenarios that they would play video games in, it didn't make sense that there was, if we had them so that they're holding the device up to a toy continuously, and kids haven't always got the most, the dexterity that adults might have. So it's, the younger you get, the more challenging it was. So it was almost like the toy was sucked into the app, and then so you go and have these experiences, but then you would go back to the toy, swap it around, play with it, and then bring it back in again. The more creative options was almost content creation driven. So you kind of create it, and then you're setting its little world up, and then creating content that you might then go and share. So there's movement, it's a bit more physical than you would have a pure video game where you just lean back and play. I think there is, we wanted to go further. We wanted to really expand it, but I think really until kids have AR glasses, I think that the reality is that ain't happening anytime soon. But it's, that if you want the true first person digital overlay in that kind of play, you can do it where you've got the mirrored view, and that's cool. But again, complex sometimes for kids to figure out how those movements.
There is this other game. This company is called Osmo. I don't know whether you have heard of. Yeah, Osmo does have this. So they have an iPad-based game. On the iPad camera, they put a mirror, so that you're actually looking at the floor instead of looking at you. So they have a stand, and on the iPad, they put a camera so that you start looking at the flat, table or floor on which this thing is kept. And then you can actually play the game in the physical world. They have simple games like you throw letters at this, and it would recognize letters, and you fill out, there's some word game that you're playing. So that's also interesting. That happens in the physical world, but the display is used to interact with you. It's almost like you're playing with some a teacher or somebody, and except that this is a screen that responds back whether you have done it right or wrong. So slightly different, but yeah.
Yeah, I really love the concept, and I think it's interesting. We tried to do the kind of using the front-facing camera to do some experiential stuff, and the challenge is that they could do it with iPads because there was a fixed position of the camera, but when you get into all of the different Android devices and the cameras are moving around, that's where the challenge comes in. And we did look at a lot of that and did a lot of tests, but the challenge is you need it to just work for everybody, there are still limitations between the different devices, sadly, but we've come a long way. I guess time is moving on, so I'll run through these relatively quickly. But this was kind of a fun one. Geolocation, again, more mobile stuff. This it was a game that was actually, they had millions of players. And we did a really cool Ready Player One activation, something with Marmite. I don't know if Marmite is popular in the US, but you either love or hate it.
Not really. I mean, is it popular anywhere?
No, hopefully not. I'm definitely not a lover, but that's their marketing campaign, and but this was a kind of almost, if you think Pokemon Go, but Pokemon Go with theft. So you essentially could steal objects from other people that are playing the game, and it was it's a really fun concept. Like we were involved in it probably 2 or 3 years back now, I think the challenge with a lot of these things is scaling them and keeping the audience engaged and finding the revenue models to support it. They did some really neat marketing things though, and we did some activations, more complex stuff with various monuments and things. We took over a plinth and put augmented content on it. So this was something a couple of years back, a very high-tech rave essentially, and working with Magic Leap and the Royal Shakespeare Company, that we were kind of involved to create these experiences. And it was really it was a digital experience to almost simulate the effects of taking drugs, I suppose. And so it was this kind of virtual trip. And it was a really interesting thing because they put you into these experiences, took your phones off you so that you had complete focus. You weren't kind of trying to it wasn't all about the Instagram. But because of that, we had even greater levels of immersion, and even the posters and everything kind of came to life. This was I'd say a couple of years back, pre-pandemic, but really, really neat concept, but not scalable, cool as a one-off, and great showcase for a technology. But you know, what we are trying to get to more accessible events where we can do these things large scale for everyone. And but these are the kind of gateways to essentially master how we would do that as the technologies evolve. So
that one was with Magic Leap?
Yes, yeah. So that was a project with Magic Leap, and this was another. And we were actually we were doing quite a lot of projects pre-pandemic again. We were doing a huge amount of trade show activations using Magic Leap, and even Philips here. You would think that mixed reality, augmented reality, is going to wipe screen technologies, that Philips provide off the map, but they were kind of future thinking enough to kind of to look at using this as a sort of way of connect the two technologies. So you almost had these brands and characters spilling out of the physical TVs on the wall, and then you had to kind of collect them in. And it was, some of these things are just really to just, we've all been to trade shows. They're not always the most exciting places, and sometimes the brands like to use technologies to kind of bring people over and to help tell them new stories. This was the cool kind of visual experience, I guess, that they wanted to showcase. But we actually developed a product with them at the same time called Arc, and that was a mobile app that allowed you to essentially put TVs up all, and then run content on them. So you could essentially figure out which TV you wanted on your wall. And that was very successful for Philips, and their installers were using all that. Not the most exciting use case, but still it was a legitimate use case for them. But this was the more fun part of that development, if you like. We've also done similar things for the likes of Mercedes-Benz, where we built a whole immersive truck, and essentially telling stories. This is specifically for their vans range. They do lots of fancy things that they wanted to communicate. So to kind of, especially as they kind of look moving towards kind of autonomous vehicles. So essentially their KPIs were really retention of information. And interestingly, in this environment, we had 3 experiences. We had a kind of wall where you had a mobile tablet, and you would just walk around and interact with features that you were interested in. You had a virtual reality motion platform experience that kind of took you on a journey through one of the vehicles, where you saw it's a bit more lifestyle focused. And then you had the Magic Leap Smart City, where we had a physical set of the city, and then we created a virtual overlay. We had 4 people around it, and then they could interact with each other and essentially plot the paths and interact with all the real features of the vans. Now, the Magic Leap experience with that virtual city, I think it lasted about 12 minutes. And the level of retention of information from it, like out of the 10 points that Mercedes wanted, I think their normal benchmark on the good stuff is like 7 for people to remember on the exit was like 9. So we were getting huge retention because of the level of immersion. And the concern at the beginning was that often when you've got put people into new technologies, they're so distracted by the new technology and how cool it is that they're not taking on the information. And we just kind of made sure that we had there was a cool minute or so of fancy things that could, and while they're kind of just getting used to it, and then we moved them into the stories, and that was hugely effective. So this is still touring now.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense, that setting it up, like basically giving them time to get acclimated before you start sending them stuff you want them to remember, is pretty smart.
Yeah.
Also, you look like you're going to destroy the city.
That's it. Well, we always want to go a bit more sci-fi. We wanted to obviously put monsters in there, but they didn't let us. This was super cool. Getting to work, having members of Pink Floyd sing our work, and this was an eighth wall piece, web-based. Yeah, this got us kind of. We're still working with Sony on other projects. Again, it's marketing led. I think the box set sold out almost instantly, so they just wanted to do something. The hope is that we'll do more. We've got a few artists that we're in talks with in a minute. So hopefully,
I'm waiting for the "Wish You Were Here" cover. I want to see somebody on fire.
Yeah, maybe that's coming the next batch, I think. And then kind of starting to sort of come to the future and what we're looking at the moment. This is actually a museum we've been designing in Mexico. It kind of got paused temporarily, as most things in life did. But this is a really, really amazing project, actually. And the guy behind it has been collecting fossils of dinosaurs from Mexico for the last 30 years. He's got a huge collection. And he even has a dinosaur named after himself called the Mauriciosaurus, which is pretty cool. But essentially, what you're seeing highlighted on the wall there is one of those fossils. And the idea is that we designed this to sort of looking at mixed reality headsets. We were looking at a combination of technologies to deliver this. You'd walk up to a fossil, you'd find out some information from it, and you might want to then add it to your kind of school of fish. Tap it, and it would, whatever kind of creature it is would then come to life and then start following you around the space. And if you look at the ceiling of the building, that is basically the entire ceiling is designed as an LED, essentially LED panels. So when you look up, it looks like you're on the bottom of the ocean looking up at the top of the ocean. And we've had a lot of this in VR and running and everything. And this is just one of the components of it. And it's, I say this kind of, we're working on a number of projects like this, and that are kind of trying to connect up very large spaces and then create digital content. And again, we don't want the traditional, you go to a museum, you look at something, you read the text about the thing, and then, and there's no relationship. The story's not coming from the object. The object's the exciting thing, and suddenly I'm just looking at some text. So we wanted to make it very, very much kind of give you agency, very participatory. And again, the idea would be a hot environment to teach kids about technology as much as the history of Mexico. So that's one of the projects that's kind of in the works. Another one is Enchanted Museum. And this is something which I'm not 100% sure I'm allowed to be talking about. So let's just carry on. But it's an amazing museum exhibit, part immersive theatre piece, and a part kind of location-based entertainment. And it really is, it's sort of looking at, it's got multiple technologies layered into it. We're interpreting people throughout the space all the time, understanding what they're doing and who they're doing it with, and kind of building that into the story and using it to sort of bring people in that maybe aren't, maybe a bit more shy, kind of not wanting to participate. Kind of, will I be able to identify, or if someone doesn't, is a bit we can really start to dial in almost to an emotional level how they're feeling, to try and bring them into the experience so that they're part of the story and having a great time. That
John,
for us,
if you don't mind, a lot of people will have to leave at
okay.
10. So let's first ask the question and we'll continue with this. Really sorry to interrupt.
Let's do it. No worries.
Okay.
Satya, your camera dropped off there. It looks like I'm seeing a blank screen for where I usually see your shining face.
All right. How about now? Is it back up?
No. Yeah, there we go. I see you now.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so thanks, John. So go ahead and unshare your screen if you don't mind. We'll do trivia here. So, Satya, would you like to tell them what they'll win if they answer the trivia question correctly?
Yeah, so you will get access to Computer Vision 1, which is our introductory course in computer vision. And this is, you'll get access instantly because, this is not like the Kickstarter one. We have the course ready and everything. So yeah, it's an introductory course in computer vision. Let's ask the question.
And you'll also, John has graciously allowed us to give away a set of SwapBots. So
That's right.
We'll be in touch for your shipping info and get you some SwapBots if you do this correctly. So if this is the first time you've been here, the way this works is I'm going to ask a trivia question that I pulled from John's slides. The first person to answer that question correctly in the Zoom chat on my screen is going to win these prizes. So early on in the presentation, John mentioned a co-founder, that John is the code in Draw and Code. Who did he say was Draw?
Oh,
Richard, got it.
Wow, that
Andy
was...
Cooper. That was a deep one.
That's correct.
Got it. All right, congratulations, Richard. We'll be in touch for your fabulous prizes. Do you want to wrap up your presentation there, John? Just final thoughts, because since we kind of cut you off, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, yeah, I didn't actually expect that we would get anywhere close to 40 minutes. So sorry for rambling on. But no, I kind of wanted to really just more tell the story and kind of dig into some of the projects. I say that there is a lot more that we're doing behind the scenes, lots of interesting things to kind of watch out for. But yeah, we're super excited and kind of coming full circle from Lava Bud and the challenges to create something like that. We are now designing experiences that will do that and go further as well. So super exciting.
So for people who want to learn about this thing, right? Those who want to do what you're doing, what are the resources, right? What are the resources they should start with? What are the technologies? Even if you give keywords to them that they can go and Google search that, oh, look up this thing, look up, a few of these things, yeah. Right? I can say off the top of my head, oh, they need to understand SLAM, for example. Yeah. Or maybe they don't with AI, with those things already parts of APIs now. Maybe they don't need to know SLAM algorithms, but yeah, take it from here.
Yeah, I think the kind of, the starting point for a lot of people is, digging into an engine. So we tend to do a lot of work with Unity, but we do use Unreal also. Generally, a lot of the different hardware and software providers out there will already have SDKs for either Unity or Unreal. They're pretty commonplace. So it's kind of AR Foundation, which is Unity's kind of wrapper for ARKit and Core. It means that you can kind of start developing experiences for AR relatively simply, supporting as many devices as possible. There are other, if you want to go down the web route, so we use things like Play Canvas and Eighth Wall are great places to start looking. So and then from a hardware perspective, there's obviously mountains, devices that we're working with, and that they range from your HoloLens 2s, Nreal. We've got a really neat set of glasses called New Eyes. We're working with lots of different tracking technologies. From a VR point of view, Quest, again, there's so many great resources available to dig in. I think from where we in 2012, there was next to no resources. Vuforia was pretty much the only option, unless you were going to write your own. But now it's kind of, there's so much kind of out of the box stuff to kind of get started started with through something like Unity. But
so,
maybe
so Euphoria may not be the right level of abstraction anymore. You directly
Euphoria is kind of, they have different focuses, I think, these days, and they are on an enterprise track. In reality, you're also tied to revenue models. It's a great technology. That they have some really interesting stuff, but if you're starting out, I think there's AR Foundation or AR Kit Core. I'd kind of suggest that myself, I'm a terrible artist, and I think that it's why Andy and I complement each other. Find someone who does what you don't is also a very good starting point, because I think that you do come across people that have got great art skills, great kind of coding skills. I think Phil might be one of those people, to be honest. But they're rare beasts.
Allegedly.
So kind of someone to if you're lacking a discipline, sometimes it's not always about going out there and learning. It's maybe create a great partnership to fast track that. But it's so easy to get started. I mean, we have people, work experience people will come and join us. They will have projects up and running, apps built on devices within hours, and that's almost like the gateway drug, and then they're hooked once they've got a virtual object on the table that they're interacting with. You just fall in love with AR, and kind of away you go.
Right. Cool. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, we've got a few here. Well, Danny would like to know, to talk about your experience using OpenCV. Like, if you can talk a little bit about how much OpenCV you've actually used over the years.
Well, personally, I haven't. We've got a couple of cameras. Interestingly, the Enchanted Museum, we're looking at using OpenCV for a lot of that, because again, we want to collect a lot of information around people's activities and actions within the space, and then build out the narrative and support from that. Essentially, we're also kind of bringing in holographics, so performers that aren't physically there. So again, the kind of computer vision components are going to play a really big part of that, so that you can understand your gestures, your interactions, and vice versa of the virtual human. But again, lots of real-time stuff, but it all starts from understanding where people are, what they're doing, how they're feeling. Like, and I think the OpenCV, like, from a cost point of view, it's insane what you guys have done there. So it gives us the opportunity, whereas before, if we were entertaining the idea of having hundreds of cameras in a venue, just for data collection, it wasn't really feasible.
Those cameras could have been $1,000 a piece instead of 99 or 129 or whatnot, as the case may be with OpenCV AI Kit.
Yeah, so I'd say that watch this space. There's some really exciting stuff that will be coming, hopefully middle of next year, let's say. But if anyone wants to kind of get in touch, so there will be a lot of the developers on the team have got some experience, and they might be able to give you a bit more about some of the projects they've been experimenting with.
Cool. I have a question, which is, I like to ask this when we have people on that have done a lot of public facing stuff, because as we know from doing this show, Satya, Murphy's law holds true. What can go wrong will go wrong. And so I'm interested in what are some, do you have any off the top of your head, really interesting failures or really surprising like successes that you just didn't think it was going to work, but it did, or something you were really sure was going to work, but fell apart in the live demo?
There definitely will be. I think kind of one of the first time we did AWE, we were so busy on kind of client work, and we'd kind of booked the flights, we'd made the plans, we knew what we were going to showcase, we just hadn't built it, and the date just kept getting nearer and nearer and nearer, and we were like, you know, we kind of had got a fair amount built, and then we flew out to San Francisco, and we're kind of like, we're 3 days from the show and nothing's really working. What have we done? And even to the point that we stayed in San Francisco. At the time, we didn't know what the Bay Area was like. We stayed in San Francisco. AWE's in San Jose. That's like an hour and a half cab, right?
It's Santa Clara, technically. It's
yeah,
over
Santa
by
Clara,
the football stadium, which is like an hour drive out of the city.
So luckily, because and we had these huge markers that barely fit in the car. Like Andy was sat in the front. I was squashed underneath a marker, coding basically after not sleeping all night because I'd been coding to kind of get this stuff working. And we genuinely, when the show was opening up and we were setting up, we hadn't got builds. Like we had next to nothing working, and it was like, we were like, what have we done? And then so we turned one of the experiences into, like, we made it that actually we're going to build it during the show so you can see it evolve. And actually we kept having people come back and they're like, oh, this is really, you know, and so it kind of turned into a success. I mean, it was the beginning. But yeah, I think that could have gone terribly wrong, and we could have just been sat there in an empty booth sobbing, basically.
Right. Yeah, Occipital was also hurriedly finishing our demo for that AWE the day of the show, so I feel your pain.
All right. I think we have run out of time now. So thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure. This is all, you know, most of the computer vision people, I mean, some of them have AR, VR experience, but a lot of them do not. So just seeing what is possible is very interesting. So thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody who came up for the show today. And thanks, Phil, for organizing it.
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for joining us once again. Thursday, next week, our guest will be the nigh legendary Jerry Ellsworth, who currently running Tilt 5. You might know her from Valve, all sorts of really cool projects. Really looking forward to that. We'll see you next time, same bat time, same bat channel, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of the webinar. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to tap the little bell icon to be notified when new episodes drop. This week's episode was brought to you by OpenCV AI Kit Lite, now available on Indiegogo. If you'd like to be in the audience next week, subscribe to the OpenCV newsletter.